Hey, hi, how are ya? Did you know that there's several different types of inspections? No, don't worry about it. You're in the same boat as a lot of folks. Okay, if asked, most people will say there's only one kind of worksite or workplace inspection. You know, the kind where people walk around and look at stuff. However, truth be told, there are several different types of workplace inspections. Okay, I may have burst a few bubbles, so let's dive in and have a look at what I'm talking about. First things first, inspections fit into two main categories, formal and informal. Now, formal inspections are recorded, usually on a form. Note that point, it's important. They're also usually executed on a schedule at regular intervals with a definitive plan on the process. Informal inspections are, by their very name, informal. And by informal, one of the differentiating factors, they are recorded on a form. Now, it's important to remember, just because they aren't recorded or recorded on a form, and they're often unscheduled, doesn't mean they're not performed with purpose and discipline. Informal doesn't mean purposeless or unplanned. In fact, intent, purpose, and planning are essential. Now, I want you to stick around throughout the video because I'm going to have a warning about intention and purpose and why you shouldn't ignore it. The other important point to note that inspections are always tied to two things and two things only, hazards and controls. They shouldn't focus on anything else. So let's start with the typical example, the formal worksite inspection. And of course, its informal counterpart. Yeah, there is one. Now, the worksite or workplace inspection is an overall observational tour of the workplace or worksite, and during this observational tour, the workers performing the inspection should focus on the following workplace elements in this order of priority. The people performing the tasks, how they're performing them, are they using the established controls as intended, such as engineering controls, safe work procedures, and, of course, are they utilizing their PPE as they're supposed to? Next, you want to look at the working environment. What's it like? Is it noisy? Is it lit well enough for the tasks being performed? Is it too cold, too hot, crowded, congested, etc.? And are any environmental hazards that are present being controlled? Next is the equipment and machinery being used. Are the engineering controls such as interlocks, guards, and shields intact, working, and being used? Or have they been circumvented for convenience? And finally, the materials that being used. Now, this can include things like building materials, but also chemicals being used in the course of the work, even ingredients during food preparation. Now, I know you're thinking, man, that's a lot to remember. And yeah, it can be. That's why you're approaching with a plan and a process, using a checklist. A checklist isn't the steps that you're taking in the order to take them. It's used to record your findings and also help you to recall what you're looking for. It isn't a map, and it shouldn't be used like one. Have you ever tried to drive, or for that matter, let alone walk with your head down looking at a map? No, likely doesn't work too well for you, does it? You'll need to consult it every so often just to make sure you're on the right track and you're recording all the things you need to record in meeting your objectives. So let's move on to the informal process now. That's it. Yeah, the informal process. No form. Anyway, the process is very similar and often referred to as a safety walkabout or a supervisor's walkabout, where the intent is to have a look at what's going on in their area of authority. Now, the same principle is often used by us, safety professionals, and we should be doing virtually the same thing and often. Essentially, what's being looked at are the same things mentioned in the formal setting. The only difference is we're not jotting it down on our trusty clipboard or mobile device, but once again, we're moving towards it and we're using a plan with purpose and intent, not just doing it for the sake of. However, and this is a big however, you may need to record things like unsafe acts or situations. So no form, but a paper and a pen. Or your phone could still work. Anyway, you should be taking notes if something out of the ordinary is occurring or an unsafe act or situation. So that's it for the generalized inspections. Let's look at some more targeted or specific inspections. Now, the intent and purpose here only differ slightly. Still looking for hazards and controls, but in a narrower scope. So the second examples of inspections deal with the corrective action confirmation. Now, this process might have already been included in your formal worksite inspections that we already talked about. And if you can have it coincide with your regular inspections, great. That's awesome. However, one thing to consider. What if your inspections are occurring every quarter and a recent incident investigation report required corrective actions to be completed within 30 days? Or a recent inspection required hazards corrected within 5 to 7 days? There's still a need. So there's going to be a need to conduct a formal corrective action progress inspection. Now, the reason I call it that is you might have to have something recur over a period of time, especially if the corrective action was a long, drawn-out process. Say, for instance, you had to get a long guardrail installed where there wasn't one before. Something like that might take a bit of time, and you might have to do several inspections. So now you know the purpose and you have a plan. You should be recording the process, especially if an outside party like a contractor is involved, and you may have to report back to somebody like the safety committee, for instance. Now, the next question you're likely asking, so, Kevin, how does this work informally? Same idea, no form. No real record, just an informal site visit or walk around. However, once again, if you see something, record it and deal with it. And you might want to fit them in between your formal inspections, something to that effect. Now, the third example, and this is a pre-use inspection process. It's used for tools, equipment, and machinery before use. Yes, there's a formal and an informal. Now, a good example is powered mobile equipment such as forklifts and complex machinery like large CNC machines. These things should have a formal process and checklist that's used prior to the first use or at the beginning of the shift. You still have to set out with a plan, depending on what you're inspecting, and for this case, let's use an example of powered mobile equipment. You're going to start at the front, check the engine components, the lights, moving around checking the warning devices, all the way to the back checking the lights, and of course looking for things like broken components and leaks. And you're going to work around the other side to the front again. Now, the next time you conduct the inspection, you might start at the back, working your way around the front, ending up where you started, but fulfilling the same process using your checklist to record each point and objective. Either way, it's systematic and you have a plan. The formal example is very similar, and it's used in cases where a pre-use has been done, but a walk-around is needed. Now, a good example, say the machine was parked. The operator had to go for lunch and left it attended. But they're going to be using the same machine, same operator, same machine again. So what will happen is the operator will do a walk around, check for leaks and obvious hazards, check the warning systems and controls before actually operating the machine, recording something only if something is amiss. Now, big point I want to stress here. If your jurisdiction or organization requires a pre-use inspection every startup or every time you start the equipment, then do it. The same informal process is used for small powered tools like drills, grinders, saws, and stepladders. Most times, a checklist or formal record isn't needed. The same thing is even done with post-inspection, sometimes called a tag inspection or a tag-out inspection, where the tool, machine, or equipment is checked for damage, and then it's tagged out for service, repair, or disposal. Now, more often than not, these two types of inspections don't need a formalized record, but once again, the same warning, when in row. In other words, if your company or jurisdiction requires you to do it, then do it. Now, this brings me to my warning that I was talking about. Think carefully about the intent and purpose when creating your inspection processes and checklists. Ask yourself, does it need to be done? Does it need to be checked? Does it need to be recorded? And if so, why? Is it needed to ensure safety and verify the function and use of the controls? That's a good thing. However, if you're just making the process for the sake of, and it's too cumbersome, too impractical, it's going to lead to nothing more than pencil whipping. No, I mean where people are just checking boxes on a form to get through the process and actually get to their jobs and do the work. Your effort is now worthless. Make it easy, make it doable by making it reasonable, purposeful, and practical. Don't create forms just as a make-work project. There needs to be a genuine purpose and intent behind it. The same thing with the steps. I'm going to give you an example. I did this. I made this mistake. You create this awesome 32-point vehicle pre-use inspection. And then what you're going to get back is every single submitted form looks the same, with the exception of the date. And incidents are still occurring. Or you may experience pushback so great, and I want you to think pitchforks and torches. So you might consider something fairly simple, like check all the lights, lift the hood, check all the fluids with yellow caps. Are the tires round? Does the horn work? Do the seat belts work? You're good to go. Now, I agree that's a little bit simplified. However, I also agree that comprehensive checks are really good for preventive maintenance and safety. But you have to consider, what are you going to get from the end user? Chew on that one for a bit. Now, did I miss anything here as far as types of inspections that I need to address? Do me a favor. Let me know in the comments. I know it seems like a lot, but have a look here at this video, and I'll talk about how many hands can make for lighter work and talk about who you can get to help you with this stuff. In the meantime, until we see each other again, and I really hope we do, be a leader, be an influencer. Provoke safety. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are. Okay? Bye for now.